Hello and welcome to Coffee with the Principals. This is your September 29th issue, and I'm Jake Booker, the principal at Lake Grove Elementary. And today we have a few things we want to just talk through at our Coffee with the Principals session. First thing we want to talk about is our district-wide Zoom expectations for the entire district. And what you're looking at now is the kind of like we like to think of it like a more adult version of what our expectations are. This is how we're helping to explain it to parents. And in a moment, we'll show you how we're sharing the same information with our scholars. But our Zoom expectations district-wide are that we have our cameras on. This is really important. Having a camera on helps scholars stay more focused and engaged in their learning. However, that being said, we also understand that there are some internet bandwidth issues. Sometimes the internet just isn't fast enough for us to have this video. So instead of being kicked off of the Zoom completely, it's better to turn that camera off for a few minutes, let the bandwidth and the internet catch up, and then try to get that video back up. And that can be accomplished just by turning that video on and off the scholar. But we do want scholars, whenever possible, to have their camera on. But we also understand that sometimes families, we're coming into your homes and we might not want that camera on. So one of the things we can do is we can set up a virtual background. And if your computer and your bandwidth has enough, your internet has enough bandwidth to handle that, then it's absolutely okay to have a background, a green screen type background set up on your Zoom, as long as it is school appropriate, because we just don't want it to cause distractions. Another really important thing we want to make sure that families understand is that it's super important for scholars to log in to Launchpad to Learning. That helps us, first of all, take attendance. So there's two layers of attendance. There's that automatic attendance that gets taken when a student logs into Launchpad, but there's also the attendance that a teacher's taking when they log into Zoom and they can see their face and they say, oh, I have all these children here. It's just an extra layer of attendance safety to make sure that we're logging into Launchpad for Learning. Super important also because on Wednesdays, that's the only way attendance is taken. Since there's no synchronous learning on Wednesday, attendance on Wednesday, which counts, is taken through Launchpad to Learning. So super important that scholars are always logging into that. And it also gives them an opportunity to see that week at a glance so that they're able to see all their asynchronous assignments and work. Also important that students are muting when they come into a classroom. There's a lot going on in our homes, and we recognize the fact that we are teaching in your living room or your dining room or in your scholar's bedroom. And there's things that are going on. There's dogs, there's vacuums, there's TV sets, there's stuff going on in the background. So to minimize the distraction of other noises, we're asking that students come in with their microphones muted. And then we'll unmute as necessary to have those conversations, those important peer-to-peer conversations, or to ask questions of the teacher. So there's absolutely time to have unmuted microphones, but for the most part, we need those microphones to stay muted. And then the next thing I want to talk about is how to raise hand, right? So that's one of the ways that we will get attention to say, oh yes, please unmute your microphone for me. And there's a couple ways that we teach scholars to raise their hand. One is to hold it up next to their face instead of way up high where the hand is out of the view of the video camera, but to keep it next to their face so the teacher can see it. And then the other is that electronic hand raising signal, and it puts that blue hand raising icon on the teacher's screen so they know to give them attention. Also, it's important, especially with our intermediate students who are more comfortable with the chat function, to use that chat function. That also helps kind of cut down on the over talking of each other. Because if one of the things you've noticed on Zoom is only one person can talk at a time. So it's not like in real life where you can have multiple people talking and their voices are layered over each other. In Zoom, only one voice gets heard. So it's important that we're using that chat box to make sure that we get everyone's ideas and thoughts and needs met. And in the primary classrooms, we're working on that too. And as scholars get more comfortable with typing and reading responses, then it is absolutely something that's that they'll be using. All right. Another thing we want to talk about, just really important, let's make sure that scholars are logging in using their correct name. That's one way that teachers can kind of help, that helps teachers recognize who's in the classroom to take attendance, especially while they're still learning the names and faces of all the scholars, especially in like specialist time where they're, this might be the second or third time a specialist has been with a specific classroom. It helps if they have the correct name. And then logging into your own Zoom. This has not been a problem in elementaries, but as if you have students who are in secondary and middle and high school, just make sure they're only going into their own classroom. It just kind of helps cut down on the disruption and distractions, having other people kind of jump into someone else's Zoom. So those were kind of the district-wide expectations, and here's how we approach them at Lake Grove. So we have a more child-friendly version of this, and this is what we share. It's called the MAC, the M-A-C, Movement, Activity, and Conversation. So we ask that students are sitting at their computer, that they're not rolling around on the floor. Now we understand that there's a need a lot of times for movement, and we build that into the schedule. So there's tons of brain breaks and body breaks, so kids can get up and move around. If they're working and learning on Zoom on their phone, we ask that they keep the phone steady and maybe put it in a place where it'll be stable, as opposed to moving it around and bouncing around a lot, because that can be disruptive to a classroom, unless it's an activity where the teacher is asking them to move around. For the most part, we want them to be kind of in one place and seated with their tablet or their phone. And next is body calm, just making sure that kids are seated or in a comfortable place where they can engage in their work. And it's absolutely okay for students to be tapping their toe quietly, or fidgeting with a pen or something, as long as it's not distracting, as long as it's not right in the camera and they're doing their thing. If it's down below and nobody can notice and they're taking care of their body, that's okay. It's okay for them to be twirling a pen as long as it's down low, or if they've got a little fidget spinner, something they're working on, just keep it down below where it's not a distraction. If it helps them engage in the learning, that's okay. Next, we want to talk about video, right? So we talked about this in the previous slide. We're asking kids keep the video on unless there's a reason not to. And that could include internet speed, bandwidth, maybe there's a privacy concern we want to address, but those we'll handle on a case-by-case basis. Eyes watching, that's something that we ask for, is that students are paying attention to what's going on the screen. And with a laptop, which most of our students have Chromebooks, those cameras are right in the center on top of that screen. So teachers can tell when they're looking at the screen and maybe when they're off watching cartoons to the side. So one of the things you look for is eyes watching. Ears listening. We sent out headphones to scholars in our School to You program. 5th grade, we're still waiting on those. They were back ordered, but they'll be coming out soon. So make sure you get out to that bus stop for the School to You so you can pick up your curriculum and your headphones and all the other stuff that'll be coming out through that program on the bus stops. C, under conversation, voice level 0 equals microphone muted. And one of the things you'll notice is in many of our classrooms, we have little signs that we'll hold up that'll have either a microphone picture with a line through it to indicate microphone off, or they might hold up one that has an on microphone that says, hey, this is time to talk. Raising your hand to speak, we already spoke about that. We talked about that. We're asking kids to hold their hand up near their face, not up really high, or to use that button to make that hand raise electronically for the teacher to see. And then kind words and actions. So that's something really important that our Classroom teachers are addressing through their social emotional lessons. Our librarian is addressing that through digital citizenship. Our counselor is addressing it through her lessons also. So it's a big focus for us this year. Really just helping students remember that even though we're not in person, we still need to be very thoughtful about using kind words and actions. And then our final slide is just really thinking through how we're setting our scholars up for success. And that looks like having a consistent space to work from, right? Maybe they've got an assigned area in the dining room, or maybe they're using the classroom. Helping keep those learning materials organized. I remember when my children were, 6 and 7 and 8, they were not naturally organized. It took a lot of effort for us to keep them organized. So I suspect that will be a thing for a lot of us. It's just really helping make sure that we're kind of keeping an eye on that learning environment, and that it's not getting overrun with toys and clothes and picture books or whatever it is. It's art stuff, whatever is not immediately important to the work, helping them make sure that that space stays maintained. Another really important thing is just creating those signs to say, hey, this is my work zone. I know a lot of families are having kids make their own do not disturb signs. So if they're doing their Zoom lessons from their bedroom, they could put that up on the door and says, do not disturb. That way siblings know, hey, this is not a good time to come in and dig through the toy box. Establishing routines and expectations, just making sure that we're waking up at a regular time and we're going to bed at a regular time. And then just having, good expectations around breaks and, kind of what lunchtime looks like. And then checking in regularly, right? Like talking to your child about what they need. And if we identify something, if you need to communicate that to me or Mrs. Perry or to the teacher, then we'll work to kind of help meet those needs. But like a daily check-in is a great thing to do with your scholar, and ask them about what they're learning. Ask them to explain what they're doing in their asynchronous work. What was your asynchronous work today? And if students know that you're asking the question, hey, what'd you do in your asynchronous work today? They'll know, yeah, people are watching me and they're making sure that I'm doing that, my work projects and my tasks. And then finally, just make sure you're praising children for their efforts and celebrating all those successes that are coming forward. I do want to, that is kind of the conclusion of the pre-planned slides. I do want to, and make sure to invite everyone to the October 10th open house. That'll be 6 o'clock. Mrs. Perry and I will be hosting a open house Zoom session for all families. It'll be about 25 to 30 minutes, and then classrooms are open up. So I'll start with Miss Perry and I. We will present for that first half hour, and then teachers will open up their Zoom classrooms through Launchpad to Learning. So at about 6:25, 6:30-ish, we'll release from our Zoom, and then we'll go to the individual classrooms for those teacher meetings. So, and you'll get to those through Launchpad to Learning. And with that, thank you so very much for tuning in to our Coffee with the Principals video, and we will see you on the Zooms.